Hey, this is NorbCam coming at you. Today, I'm honored to be joined by former Seahawks running back Curt Warner and his wife Anna to talk about football, family, and living with autism. Curt was a Seahawks running back from 1983 to 1989 and was inducted into the Seahawks Ring of Honor. Curt and Anna have 4 children, Jonathan, Isabella, and their twin sons Christian and Austin, who suffer from severe autism. Curt and Anna had struggled silently for years raising a family with autistic twins. In 2018, they published their book, The Warner Boys, a personal memoir about their fight to keep their family together against all odds. Now, there is new hope for their boys to live more independent lives, but they'll need our help for the dream to come true. With Christian and Austin, your twins, at what point did you start to realize that something may not be right with them?
I was around 18 months old, 2 years. They were very hyper. We thought, okay, they're twins. They had, at the time I was speaking Portuguese. I wanted all 3 boys to learn Portuguese and English. So I was speaking Portuguese to them, but they developed their own language, which is normal between twins. Boys are usually late developing language. So I was like, okay, but they were very hyper. They were eating non-food items and not sleeping much. A lot of crying. Yeah,
especially in comparison to Jonathan, who was 9 months, 18 months older. Yeah.
Jonathan was very laid back.
But they were not, their mannerisms and all the other things were different. Now, they could be different because they're twins, but they were the behavior issues, the crying and just not being,
Christian,
they were having a tough time.
Christian will be more like in the corner, lining up his toys, and Austin will be climbing on everything. And
they weren't talking to us. They were more self-absorbed.
Yeah,
meaning that we were there, but they had they were thinking or behaving in such a way that they just wanted to be left alone.
Yeah, so, they were not saying, mom or dad. No, they were just, Austin had about 5 words. By the age of 5, he had about 5 words, and Christian had less than that.
So we knew something wasn't right. We just didn't know, what it was.
Yeah.
You mentioned in your book where you went to, I think, a doctor appointment, and you were trying to explain about how, was it Austin who was eating things, and something happened in the office. Tell that story, because it's almost, if evidence presenting itself right there, that was a clear example where the doctor, okay, I see what you're talking about. What happened on that day?
They were chewing wood. Okay, window sills had little teeth mark. Our table had teeth mark. Chairs. So I was telling the doctor that I said, it's like living with 2 beavers in the house. Everything has, teeth marks. And so the doctor had one of those tongue depressors. Yeah, and kind of gave it to Austin just to entertain him. And I'm explaining to the doctor. Then I looked. He had destroyed that thing, and he was eating. And I said, okay, right there it is. That's what he's doing. And it's called pica. It's a mineral deficiency. And there was, it was iron deficiency or something like that. And when you eat non-food items. So strange behaviors.
Yeah.
Now, at that point, did you still not know what the diagnosis was? Were you still searching? And eventually...
Yeah, we didn't know.
Okay, so when did it finally come clear that this is what they have, that they have autism?
It was right before they turned 5 when we moved to down here to Camas. And we had just purchased a dealership in Vancouver. And the manager... at the dealership had mentioned something about a developmental pediatrician that he knew, and talked to Curt about it. And they set up an appointment. So it was about 2 weeks prior to their 5th birthday. And we took Austin, who had a little bit more language than Christian. So we went in to see the doctor, and I'm explaining to her, in 5 minutes in the room with Austin, she said, it's autism. And I'm like, what do you mean it's autism? I'm thinking it's ADHD or something because they're so hyper. And she said, yeah, he has autism. And of course, my answer, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? Did I raise him different than Jonathan? Or, she's like, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. And, but that was it. Is autism that there's like, Curt asked her, what can we do? And she said, there's nothing you can do. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, how do we fix this thing? Now that we know what it is, we've identified it. What's the next step? What are you going to do to fix it? And she didn't say anything.
Yeah, she said, there's no fix. There's no
fix
cure.
It to it. I'm like, what do you mean there's no fix it to this? There's got to be a fix to it.
And you got to remember, this is 1999, okay? And so we drove home, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, next week we're bringing Christian in. I mean, that's...
Well, he has it as well. He has autism.
Yeah.
So we once she diagnosed Austin,
it was the quietest ride home.
It was a tough ride.
And so we got home. We had a friend that stayed over with the boys, so we can go to the doctor. And I got online. I got on the computer, and just typed autism. What can we do? Tell me something about it. Because the only image that we had of autism was the Rain Man. Yeah. And that was not our case. So we was just like, okay, let's learn about it. What can be done? And I heard, I read about therapy that can help the boys. And I started digging into all of that and making phone calls. And Curt met somebody at the dealership, mother, who's a dear friend of ours now, whose son had autism, a little younger than Austin and Christian, about the same level. And we met, and she said, here, this is the therapy that you can do, which is ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis. This is what you can do. Let's set up a program. Let's start it. And back then, there were no insurances paying for anything. It was all, instead of having a college fund, we had an autism fund. Everything was going towards therapy and doctor appointments and dietary changes.
This is all coming out of your pocket. It's all coming out of your pocket.
Everything. Yeah. And they had 40 hours of therapy a day for each boy. And it was just, it was intense. The house was therapy, therapists coming in and out of the house all day long. And
it was tough.
We started gluten-free, dairy-free, and back then there was nothing available. We had to make everything from scratch, and it tasted horrible. And so a lot of learning and a lot of investing in time and energy, money, and so they could get to, through therapy, they started speaking and learning to read and write and count and do a little bit of math and being able to go to school. So it was a good investment, in my opinion, because I think the results could have been a lot worse than what they are now.
Which would be some type of institution.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to didn't want to go down that road.
One of the things you talked about in your book that touched me as a father myself was you mentioned how the boys sometimes out of frustration would start hurting themselves, hitting their heads on things to the point where they would bloody themselves, and your natural inclination is to hold them and comfort your child when they're having a hard time. But you talked about how sometimes that's the last thing they wanted because something is bothering them that to even be held might worsen the situation. And that's just hard to even wrap your mind around because normally hugs and love, that's kind of like, it's a natural comfort, right? You can always go to that and think anything, no matter how bad things are, you can always give somebody a hug. But in this case, sometimes that's not even, you can't do that. Talk about some of those challenges, what that was like for you, Curt, as a dad going through this when the boys were at that younger age.
Oh, yeah. It's a tough reality to live with, knowing that you're not connecting at that level. But I think as we had talked earlier, I said, I'm going to keep doing it whether or not they want it or not, as much as I possibly can. And I still have to, we still have to kind of, prompt them when it comes to, a hug, especially Christian. But he'll hug you, momentarily. He'll give you a hug. But Austin at times will overdo it and give you a big hug. It's just life in general that you take for granted. That you just automatically assume that your kids are going to, at a certain age, are going to be able to do certain things. They're going to be able to figure out which clothes they want to wear. They're going to figure out whether or not when they go to the shower, how long they're going to stay and when they're going to get out.
Or use the bathroom.
Independently. So it's just, it's kind of like Groundhog Day to a certain degree when it comes to autism.
But every little accomplishment is highly celebrated over here because to hear your child call you mom or dad, it just happens when they're little. For us, it took a long time to hear mom or to hear I love you, even though sometimes it's prompted. But we celebrate the little things more so than a parent of a neurotypical child. So it's just sometimes delayed, but it happens, and we celebrate that.
You learn what is unconditional love. Yeah. And unconditional love, even if they burn your house down, you still love them accidentally. Yeah. You still love them. Yeah. Even if they're tearing the walls up in your house, you still love them. Now, you may not be happy with them, but you adapt. You adapt and you learn to love regardless. Yeah. And I think that's a lesson that, it's a hard lesson to learn, but it is a lesson to learn. So we love these guys regardless. We love Jonathan, we love Isabella, and we love Austin, and we love Christian, and we want to do what's best for them, regardless of the situation. The expectation levels have changed, and we've had to change along with them.
Well, I know you had to adapt. There was a point in your lives where you had to basically lock yourselves in your house and almost shut yourselves off from the rest of the world because it was really for the survival and safety for the boys. And I think what you discussed was that you weren't able to communicate this to a lot of people who didn't really know your situation. What was that like when you had to, we've been living in a quarantine situation with this pandemic this past year, which has been very strange for all of us, but you lived that pre-pandemic years ago in your own way by yourselves. What was that like? And describe why you had to do such an extreme to actually physically lock yourselves in your house to protect your family?
The boys would wander out of the house and
escape out of the house and gone. So
when they were little, we tried. Austin could climb a 6-foot fence like this. He's very athletic and fast. And you blink it, he was gone. We tried all kinds of in therapy trying to stop him from doing. Now he is a very good problem solver, and he'll find ways to get out. So we had to put keys, locks, front door, backyard door, because he'll climb out of the yard and harm
himself.
Yes. And we had to put locks on the windows because one time Christian opened the window. He was leaning against the screen from the second floor, and a neighbor called and said, "Hey, Christian is about ready to fall from the second floor." So we had to make sure that everything that we had knives, kitchen knives, we had to put in the pantry, and we had to lock the pantry. Because Austin one time was playing and with the big knife, and he was little, and he was
impersonating
the Sleeping Beauty. He grabbed a big knife and went to stab the dragon, which was our couch, living room couch. So we had to lock the pantry, and that was what we needed to do to keep them safe.
And we're just kind of, it's like the tail wagging the dog. That's really what it was like for a long period of time. We were reacting.
Yes.
To
survival. Yeah.
We were in survival mode for a long time. And, who are you going to complain to?
Yeah.
Who do you talk to about it? You tell them what's going on, and it's like they're just looking at you like, really? Seriously? You can't make this up. What we were dealing with, you can't make it up. And it was happening every day.
We had Austin escape one time and broke into the neighbor's house and knocked on the door, on the back door. And they're a dear friend of ours. And her father was visiting and saw Austin in the backyard, He opened the door and let Austin in, and Austin was in their office on the computer printing stuff. And, just stuff like that. They were like, okay, for their safety, we need to...
you can't make this stuff up. So the things that we're saying in the book, it's actually, these things are happening, and we're just going like, wow.
Yeah, broken doors. When they were frustrated or, angry, they'll hit the walls, and they still do it. So we had broken walls, broken doors, and so we had to learn to fix holes, learn to adapt, and and just survive. Pretty much that was it.
Was there anybody you could talk to who understood your situation, that when things just got bad enough, you could at least sort of share what's going on, because you were so cut off from so many people? Was there anybody you could kind of turn to? At least?
You know what? At the time, I don't think we just didn't want to deal with anybody. I think it was more just we were frustrated.
No, I think it was just we were mentioned to our friends, who are neighbors and other, friends. Yeah, but it wasn't. It was just like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
To us, it was just like, it's not gonna, complaining is not gonna get things done. And so we just like, okay, our friend Richie was like, hey, we have way too many holes in the walls. Can you come down, next month and help us fix the holes? And he was like, okay, I'll be there for the weekend. And he'll come down for the weekend. And so.
No, it wasn't that we were just disgruntled to the point where we just didn't want to talk to anyone. It was just that we were, when you're in survival mood. We keep singing that.
Yeah.
You're just, where are you going to get the energy to sit down and talk about something like that? You just don't have energy, and your focus is so right there.
There's so much to be done.
That you just, I don't.
Yeah.
Maybe we should have gone to a therapist. Maybe we should have therapist come over and do family therapy or something. I don't know.
But you're in the battle. You're in the battle, so you don't have time to talk about the battle because you're battling all the time, right? So it's you never get a timeout. I'm guessing is the feeling is that you're 24/7. Somebody's on watch. Like you talk about, even at night when sleeping, somebody's got to decide who's gonna get the rest tonight and who's gonna be sort of on the
night shift
security alert.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that, most of us could take for granted, that at a certain point, no matter how rough it gets, okay, let's just call it a night, get some shut-eye. Well, you guys didn't even have the luxury of getting nice shut-eye. Somebody was
when
always...
I hear people talk about, well, my kids aren't sleeping, and I just go, okay, that's fine.
The patience I'm sure you had to have was the patience of Job and times whatever, 100, 1,000. Anna, you talked about how sometimes taking the boys for long drives in the car would soothe them. And I remember that too, when sometimes the babies wouldn't go to bed. There's something soothing about the car that would just knock them out. You just drive around and that something relaxing about it. But I also know that, and you said in the book that this was some of the darkest times when you would be alone, or not alone, but you'd be with the boys driving, alone with your thoughts, and you had to go to some very dark places. What was that like for you? Because I know that had to have been some of the lowest times when you were in the battle still, but had a moment to think about things. What was that like for you?
I dealt with depression. I had postpartum depression with the twins, and I've dealt with that pretty much my adult life. And this guy has been my rock here, always very supportive. But during times like that, he didn't know about it.
No, I didn't. Yeah, there are things that I did not know that I found out in the book. He found out when. Like, really? Yeah. I didn't know you were at that point. I knew she was having some issues, but I didn't even realize just how significant. I didn't realize just how difficult things were, with what she was going through.
I would drive around with them. I got to know all the back roads of Camas, and we would drive around and just listening to music, to my Christian radio station, K-Love, and sometimes I'd just cry, and many times I thought, you know what, Jonathan Curt will be better off without us, because this is too much for anybody, and life will be easier for them if we're gone. And I'll just cry, and the right song will come on, and I'll just a lot of prayer. And I'll be able to go home. And a lot of times this was done when he was out, but because that was during the weekend. On weekdays, the boys had therapy, speech therapy, and all of that. But weekends, I was with them most of the time, and Curt would do. We wanted Jonathan to have a normal life, and Curt would take him to baseball or basketball or whatever sport he was doing at the time, and I'll be just driving around with the boys. And I'm thankful to that I didn't make the decision to do anything more drastic.
Curt, did you realize that she was having even those dark thoughts at that time, or did you read about this in the book?
He found out when we were I had talked to Dave Bowling, our co-writer, and I told him about it. And one day the three of us were talking, having a Zoom meeting like that. We used to have one with him every week. And he asked if I had told Curt about it, and then I revealed to him, and he was just like,
you know what? I knew it was bad. I just didn't know it was that bad. Meaning that she was at her wit's end. Yeah. And we're just thankful to the good Lord that wasn't the case. That something would always something, a song or something that she would hear or that would encourage her to, okay, now is not.
But Jonathan was little, and sometimes I'll sit down on the stairs and I'll be crying, and Jonathan will be hugging me. I got to remember, the boys were 5, Jonathan was about 7, and he will hug me and say, "It's going to be okay, Mom. It's going to be okay." Mm-hmm. So just little things like that, or I'll be too tired, and Curt said, "Honey, just go to bed. I got this." And I couldn't have done this without him. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you're dealing with isolation.
Yeah,
and that everything just adds up.
Yeah.
So when does this stop? Where does this stop? I don't know. Was it the 5th year or the 10th year or the 15th year that you go, we're still dealing with it, but we're not dealing with as much, or maybe perhaps we've learned to just go, okay, we're only going to take in so much, and then after that, we're going to just let it go.
Yeah,
we still have
pick your battles.
Yeah, we still have our issues, but not. And they still need assistance. They still need help.
Yeah.
Autism is still.
They don't grow out of it.
They don't grow out of it. Although I wish they would. I wish there was a magic potion or pill or whatever, but the good Lord, doesn't do things that way. He gives us the strength to move forward. So that's what we're doing, just moving forward.
Jonathan must have really had to grow up fast and be a big brother, bigger than probably most big brothers would have to learn to grow into those shoes. What was it like for him?
We knew that it impacted him. Curt did the part, the sports part of his life. I would watch, we'll sit down at night and he would come to our bed. And him and I would sit down and watch the Cosby Show together. That was our moment together. And, it hit him hard, especially after the fire. He just hated it. He hated life with us here. He hated that his brothers had autism. They didn't have.
He missed. We think he
missed having a relationship with his brothers and
a relationship with his parents
Yes,
relationships in general.
Yeah.
So the isolation, is for the siblings. It's hard. Extremely difficult for siblings.
You will see it now with Isabella too. It's hard.
You mentioned the fire a couple of times. I have to ask you about that, since I know that's one of the most traumatic experiences you guys had to go through. Tell me about what happened that night when the house caught fire, and what was kind of the surprise cause of that. And when I read about it, you mentioned the Disney's reenacting. There's kind of a story and connection to that. So talk about the night that the fire happened.
Well, it had a week prior to the fire was Isabella. We celebrated Isabella's 2nd birthday. So we knew we had to lock up, matches and stuff, like knives and stuff like that. So Curt had the matches somewhere in a garage, and I think Austin, when Curt went to get that to light up the candles, I think Austin saw it, and he's very good at problem solving and being sneaky, and somehow he was able to get in the garage, get the matches, and he hid them in his room for the right moment. Because he knew it had to be when Dad was not home. So that day, Curt was getting ready to go to work, and I had asked him to stay home. I don't know why, but I was like, "Can you stay home?" And he's like, "No, I have a meeting, I have to go." So it's like, okay. So he left. Jonathan was sick and watching TV in our room. And I was downstairs doing Isabella's hair, watching Sesame Street, and Christian was sitting on the couch with me when the smoke detector went off. And I knew it. I got up And I was just like, Austin. So we had 2 staircases. So I went on this back one, and I find Austin coming up with a glass of water on the other side. And his room, smoke everywhere. And Jonathan came out of the room too. So he used the water, kind of just threw the water in there. And I could see that the curtains were already starting to catch on fire. And I told Jonathan, grab the kids and put them in the car. And so Jonathan went downstairs, grabbed Isabella and Christian, and I was trying to get like, I don't even know if it was like sheets or whatever to try to stop the fire. When I grabbed my phone and called 911, and because his room was already completely engulfed. And then I called Curt and I said, the house is on fire. And he's like, what? I said, the house is on fire.
Then she hung up.
Yeah. And it said, we're leaving. And I hung up. And so I go downstairs thinking that everybody's already in the car. Jonathan comes out of the garage. Mom, Austin is gone. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I went upstairs thinking that he was going to try to put the fire out. And when I got up there, I mean, the ceilings were all completely engulfed with smoke. And I could barely breathe. And then I heard Jonathan say, Mom, I found him. So I'm coughing and coming down the stairs. I grabbed the dog, put him outside. I opened the front door so the fireman could know where it was coming from. And we get in the car and I just back out of the garage and the windows were exploding at that time. And we're just like, I parked the car next to the neighbor's house. And I'm looking at the house and it's completely engulfed and I'm coughing. And then we're like 3 engines, I think, come. And of course, Austin and Christian at this time were 12 years old. So you mentioned, to the fire chief, like, oh yeah, my son, I think started the fire in his room. Of course, they're like, okay, the boy's a teenager. What is he doing starting a fire? That evening, because my first, thought was, where am I going to go with 2 boys with severe autism? Where are we going to stay? How am I going to go to a hotel? And good friends next door, she ran from her, Allison, she ran in and just hugged me and said, you guys stay with us. You stay with us. That night when I was giving Austin a shower, that's when he told me that he was sorry. And and usually it's, kind of a broken language kind of, Austin's sorry. Mama almost died because he saw I needed oxygen. And then he said that he was Pinocchio and he was inside of the whale. And to get out of the belly of the whale, Pinocchio started a fire. And that's what happened. That's what he did. But then he was like, Mama almost died. And so he understood that, what he did was dangerous and wrong. And at the time, I saw the fire chief a few days later and told him about that. And he said, he thanked me for saying that because they were thinking about pressing charges because he was 12 years old. And but when I said to him that I was giving him a shower, he was like, oh, okay, so that's they are developmentally delayed and we're not going to press charges. So yeah, so we stayed at our friends for a couple of days and found a house. to rent until we lost 95% of our stuff. And
but the family's okay.
Yeah, but the family's okay.
Curt, what was from hearing Anna's perspective, you got a phone call and just said, the house is on fire, we're leaving. So what was it from your end? Because you're someplace completely else. You had this phone call. What was your reaction? What did you do the moment you heard your wife's voice telling you that the house is on fire?
I think the first, with disbelief, I think that you know, like, really, this can't be happening. So I called back and there was no answer. So I was in a meeting and I just said, hey, I got to go. And I left. And it took a while for me for it to sink in until I actually got there, because the natural defense is to kind of go in disbelief until you actually get there. And then when I got there,
well, and they had closed the streets down because we had like 3 or 4 engines, and so they closed everything down, and he ran. And when he saw it, he kind of just broke down, and
And I assume this is pre-cell phone time, so you're not able to talk to Anna, stay in touch. You're having to go from one call, and all of a sudden you have no idea what's happening this whole ride home, right? So the anxiety of that must have just been driving you crazy.
Yeah, and then, knowing that there's Austin and Christian and Jonathan and Isabella, I mean, you don't know who made it or who made it out and who didn't make it out. So it was not a fun ride.
And we had, neighbors, the neighborhood kind of really
pitched in
and helped and brought food and helped us move into this new place that it was really amazing to see that.
To watch the other interview segments of Curt and Anna about playing with the Seahawks in the 80s, how they met, and the exciting new opportunities for their autistic twins, click the videos on the screen. Thanks for watching.